Tess Lawrie back with us again. Tess, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for inviting me again.
Always good to have you on, and we've had you on a number of times. We're going to talk about something a little bit different today. But first of all, for all those watching stateside with the War Room Posse who maybe haven't come across Tess because she is over in the UK. That is her handle at Lawrie_DR. That is for those listening at LAWRIE_DR. And she's a doctor, researcher, health advocate, and co-founder of World Council for Health. That is worldcouncilforhealth.org and betterwayconference.org convener. And all those links are in the description. And of course, I would recommend you, for those of you who use Substack, to sign up to her Substack, drtesslawrie.substack.com. Make sure and use that. Now, Tess, we've had you on before talking about the great work that you have done, especially with World Council for Health. And I personally benefited from looking at your website, all the information. This is something slightly different. Let me bring up the website. And people know what they can find when they go on the website, worldcouncilforhealth.org. And we're going to look up in the resources section and down at the policy brief. And actually, you need to jump past, because you've been doing so much work, you need to go past 3 of them onto human trafficking, a call for action, ending modern day slavery. And I have read it when it first came out, and I've read it again for this interview, and it is a shocking, harrowing, in-depth, thought-provoking brief. But maybe I can ask you, Tess, first. Obviously, we watch the work that you do on highlighting the COVID tyranny side and the attack on our medical freedoms. This is something quite different. Tell us kind of how that fits into the ethos of what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. Well, you know, what's become clear over the COVID crisis, and certainly in the beginning we were focused on COVID. COVID was the health crisis that was affecting everybody. We now see that it was a man-made health crisis, and in actual fact, the interventions that were rolled out by our authorities were extremely dangerous, in fact, particularly with regard to the COVID injections. However, it's become clear, especially with this concentration of power in the World Health Organization, that sovereignty is absolutely key to the health issue, to us being healthy. So our position is health sovereignty. This is what we are for. We are for health sovereignty. If you compare to the existing authorities, the legacy authorities, their position has become what they call health security. It seems more of a disease system. I would call it disease security or vaccine security, but it's certainly not a health system. And so we are for health sovereignty. And as soon as one looks at sovereignty, one realizes that it's a huge issue. Now, I just want to lay out our vision for health and a healthy world, because our slogan is "There's a better way." And there's a lot of resistance. You'll see, with the anger and whatnot about what's going on. But we really are we really believe that the way out of this tyranny is through creation, and the creation of a better world. And we absolutely believe this is possible. And our vision for this better world is a healthy, free, and sovereign world where everyone has what we need to generate, sustain, and protect our own health and that of our loved ones, our communities, and our environments. It's such a simple ask. But when one looks at the sovereignty side of things, the elephant in the room is the fact that we have human trafficking, as the most or the most or second most profitable criminal industry, but it's growing faster than the drug trade. So we are while we're promoting health sovereignty and we're saying sovereignty, the definition of sovereignty, or the definition that we use, and how I understand it perfectly, is that we act on our conscience, we know right from wrong, we govern ourselves. So we're our own territory, and no one can come and do anything to me because this is my territory. We make our own decisions. We are self-determining creatures. Now, that's not what we've seen in the last 3 years, certainly, and before. And we are moving into a system where the concentration of power is such that our human rights and our sovereignty is actually being derogated. It's being violated. It has been. There have been many violations in the last 3 years. So we need to all relearn about what sovereignty means. And many people think sovereignty is something reserved for royalty, or or a king, for example. But absolutely not. We all should be sovereign. And in fact, I think it's one of those words that's been hidden from us. So if you struggle with the word sovereignty, and some people certainly struggle to spell it, like me, you can use self-determination. I think of self-determination and self-governance. And the idea of self-governance frightens many people because it means taking responsibility for your actions and your behavior and your thoughts, and everything, and your health. So it may not be something that is a desirable thing for many. But in looking at sovereignty under the lens, and freedom, which freedom is a fundamental human right, freedom to speak, to travel, to choose, and bodily autonomy, and so on. These fundamental things are absolutely intangible to many, many people. And in particular, then, one has to look at slavery and human trafficking. How can we live in a world now where slavery is ubiquitous? And I was just reflecting on the fact that slavery was officially abolished in 1833, in the UK at least. So how can it be that there is still slavery occurring, and not only slavery for the purposes of labor, but child sexual exploitation? So I think I probably need to refer to the document for figures, but it's something like a quarter of those, something 6.3 million from 2019 figures per day, are in a situation of slavery, either for employment, forced labor, for organ trafficking, or for sexual exploitation. And a quarter of these are children. And about 2/3 of those are children under the age of 8. So, it's when you look at the figures, it's absolutely shocking. And it's something that's so difficult for people to engage with. And who can blame them? Because we so like to feel safe, and we like to believe in democracy, and we like to believe in the goodness of people. And so it's very difficult to look at this very painful subject, because what it says about us as society and as human beings is hard for us to face.
Oh, completely. And when you're involved in the media space, or a campaigner or a policymaker, you come across a lot of issues. And this issue, I think specifically, especially on the sexual side, especially when you involve the issue of children, is extremely harrowing. And I'm very grateful, because it's a short document. It's what, 20 pages, 18 pages, yes. Reference to the back. And if I could just pull out just a few parts of it, because I went through it with a pen, and highlighted some of the issues to bring. And I would encourage, I think many of our viewers and listeners are people that want truth, that want to see, as you point out, a better world, a better life, something different. And they don't necessarily agree with the narrative they're given. And I think in that context, this is an important document to read, but it is also a difficult, but unless we address these difficult issues, we won't come out the other side and find solutions. But simply on just page 1, Tess, it talks about, according to the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, human trafficking is the fastest growing criminal industry in the world, with an estimated annual revenue of $150 billion. It's become the second largest criminal enterprise in the world after drug trafficking, and may soon surpass the latter. There is a financial side to this, and I guess that is why you have the success. You've got the demand, but it is about generating finance, generating money. It's about a business, and that's why it's so successful, and that's why there's difficulty, I guess, on stopping it, because there are vested interests in this.
Well, slavery has always been a profitable enterprise. It's extraordinary, really, that this can be going on under our noses, and yet we still don't talk about it. And there are classic situations like wars when that facilitate the trade in human beings. So and there are wars going on at the moment. So these things, these absolute horrors are what facilitate the trade in human beings, and vulnerable people and vulnerable families are also at risk. But there is also a sense that this is something that happens in the less developed countries, and so the Western countries or Western people often feel that it's not. The sense is that they feel it's not their responsibility. Well, the wake-up call really is that it's the market forces in the Western world that are driving human trafficking, and it is North America and Europe that are the biggest markets for child sexual exploitation and pornography. So we are absolutely central to this abhorrent industry, if you can call it that, this criminal industry, and it's very easy for us to for individuals to say, oh, well, this is such a big thing, and if I look at this pornographic image of a child, it doesn't hurt anybody because the image is already there. I'm just looking at it, or whatever. I don't know how people justify looking at these sorts of things, but pornography is highly addictive. And so if you're looking at adult images today, you could be looking at child images tomorrow. It's absolutely proven to be addictive and very destructive on the sense of moral fiber, on your sense of sovereignty, which is acting on your conscience, doing no harm. And on family life and personal sense of integrity. So it has far-reaching consequences accessing that kind of material, and beyond that sustains and feeds this absolute beast of immoral, degenerate, unkind, harmful, deadly, in actual fact, industry.
No, completely. And you talked about a couple of things. Talk about that figure. You in the report, it says 2/3 of the estimated $150 billion global revenue of human trafficking comes from sexual exploitation. And then again, you touch on the figures that nearly 50 million human beings, which is 1 in every 150 people in the world in modern day slavery on any given day. And then over 12 million of those are children, which is a third. It's not just the revenue side, but it's the scale of the side. When you're in the UK and you think 50 million, that's 2/3 the size of the UK. There are many individuals, and then you begin to think of actually this affects individuals. It's not just finance or a mass of people, but actually there are 50 million personal individuals involved that have their own life story, that have their own circumstances, their situations, and they have been caught up into this industry. And I think that really hit me, the 50 million of which 12 million being children.
And some as small as this, this is, it's really, I urge your viewers to go to one of, if you go to my Substack, there's an interview that I had with Max Lowen, who's a survivor of human trafficking, child sexual exploitation, and ritual satanic abuse. And she was trafficked from a baby by an uncle. And I think one of the things that really stands out is that she was not from a poor family in some far off place. She was from Italy, from a diplomatic family, and very well off, and she was trafficked at the highest levels. So this is something it's perpetrated by individuals at the highest levels, and they use their positions of power to engage and probably to maintain a sense, whatever their status is with, and I would expect probably there's blackmail and bribery and all that sort of stuff. That is part and parcel of this very broken system that we live in, and that we're actually seeing crumble down. So I think there is an upside to this, and which is why we at World Council of Health really encourage people to engage with this issue, because pedophilia is at the, it runs through our society. It's family men, it's neighbors, it's in Parliament, it's in business, academia, and so on. And by shining our light on this is how we stop it. We shine a light on it, and obviously, if there are individuals, if there are people listening who do look at images from time to time while they're waiting in a car or waiting for something or whatever they're doing when they're alone, please know that what you are doing is harmful, and please stop it. And this is how, by taking responsibility and control individually, and shining the light on these things that are that have been too difficult for us. Now is the time really for us to shine a light on it, to help those victims. What you will hear from Max Lowen is that children are literally kept in cages. People are kept in cages, and there is a psychopathy of anti-human mentality. And I think what's very difficult for people who believe in humanity and loving communities, and that it's especially difficult for them to look at and imagine that there could be people who don't like human beings, see them just as animals, or see them as something that's just a product that can be bought and sold. But make no mistake, people are being bought and sold despite slavery being abolished. And if I could just say there, and there's no reason to be surprised that there are rules and regulations that are being flouted, like the abolition of slavery, because we also have very firm conventions on human rights, which have been violated for us all during COVID. Human rights have been violated left, right, and center with regard to masking, lockdowns, and so on. So we are living in a system where the man-made rules and regulations, as flawed as they, as flawed or as competent as they may have once been, they don't work anymore, because if you have sufficient money or incentive, or you're sufficiently degenerate, you don't abide by these international treaties. The Nuremberg Code is another one, which was done, because of all the human rights violations of the Second World War, and that was also just totally ignored. So we really need to face facts, and the big picture is we are living in a house that is absolutely decayed from the inside out. So it's like, I don't know if you know, like the borer beetle, the I think it's called the Death Watch beetle. It eats the timber from the inside out, and you don't realize your house is falling down until it's, fallen down. Well, our house is falling down. It's been totally infiltrated by these corrupt parties over a very long time. The whole thing's coming down. We're going to really need to really clean it up well, shine a light on everything, get rid of all the muck, and build very strong, sound foundations based on health, freedom, and sovereignty for all, especially and including these very poor children and others who are in cages right now.
Yeah, completely. And you mentioned satanic ritual abuse. We'll not touch on that. That's probably one of the darkest subjects I've ever come across in my life, sitting in meetings with survivors on that. And I know you touch on the side of blood being used and organs being used in satanic rituals, and that is part of this. Can I just bring up this is what people get on your Substack, Dr. Tess Lawrie, that's DrTessLawrie.substack.com for those listening. Do go along and make use of that. I want to go on to the other parts of trafficking, I think the forced labor and servitude, but one of the lines in the report was, well, drugs are bought and sold once. Adults and children can be treated multiple times a day. And that really struck me. You have a product like a drug that's consumed and then is finished, but the whole industry of the child sex industry, the adult sex industry, is something that's perpetuated many times. And what you said is so true. That's why it becomes so profitable.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Peter, I must just say, I cannot take credit for this wonderful document. It's a very thorough, comprehensive document. It is put together by our team of experts and political scientists and so on. So I just wanted to make sure that you're aware that there is a team behind this, and I'm very grateful and thankful to them for putting together such a robust document.
Oh, and I've enjoyed watching different videos that you put out, and I recognize there is a great team behind you, Tess, and hugely appreciative of all the work they do behind the scenes on all the research, which I know is immense from looking at some of the topics. But the other side is the forced labor and servitude. In the document, you talked about nearly 70 million, or actually no, so over 20 million people caught in modern day slavery or trafficked for forced labor and servitude. You talk about them toiling in mines and factories and homes, construction sites, and often that can be happening close by us. It's not just in foreign countries. You talk about Qatar being an example of that, but it can also be happening next door to us. And that is another part of this hidden abuse, I think, that many people are unaware of.
Yes, and also the products, because everybody goes out and buys the latest electric vehicle or mobile phone because it's supposedly better at X or better at Y or better for the environment even, which is such a big con because a lot of the materials for those vehicles, for example, are actually being mined by slaves in Africa. So it's people really need to have a look, really examine very carefully and research before they purchase things. And that is another way, just making sure that you don't fall for the propaganda that encourages you for an environmental reason to go and do something. Remember, we're living in a corrupted information ecosystem. So what you see on the TV, what you read in the newspapers, or certainly the corporate media, is not true. It needs to be, it's not balanced anyway. It's not balanced. It's there because you are a consumer. We are consumers, and they're wanting to sell us something, be it an idea, an item, or so on. So we really need to recognize that the information ecosystem, like everything else, the health system, the judiciary, has been corrupted, and we need to do our own research, take back responsibility and control of our decisions, and make sure that we are doing things that will lead to health, freedom, and sovereignty, and better for ourselves and our families and our communities and our environment. Because if we don't, then we're leaving our future in the hands of the supranational entities and a handful of billionaires who see us as data to be bought and sold and hacked and so on.
Oh, completely. And I think some of the areas you touch on are closer to home and our responsibility, and but some of them are far away. But I think with an interconnected world, that we are all responsible for how we respond and how we highlight injustices, even if they're not necessarily in our back garden. And you talk, one of the subsets in it is organ and blood harvesting. You have a whole side section on India's blood farmers, and about how blood and organs are taken and passed on and sold. Talk about the BBC highlighting this, many journalists highlighting this. I think the whole was the Falun Gong. You see them out often demonstrating. I remember when I first came across this and thought, these are just crazy people. I'm sure that stuff doesn't happen. And then you begin to delve into it and you realize this is the reality of many individuals in parts of the world. The Falun Gong obviously is in China. You've highlighted India, but there are many parts of the world that this happens, and I think is the norm. And it is up to each of us to highlight that and speak up.
Yes. As I say, it really is. It's hard to believe, and most people struggle to believe, but it's very easy to find out the truth. One just needs to, what one finds is, as soon as you step away from that position of disbelief, everything becomes clearer. One needs to give new ideas a chance to breathe, and then one is able to discern the truth. I think one's intuition can be heard. So it's a question, as I say, of just allowing yourself to listen to the arguments, to hear what people have to say before dismissing it, and then you're able to make up your mind in an informed choice.
And then all these things, it's not victimless. That you talk about organized crime be dominating 75% of the field of human trafficking across the board. You talk about the whole issue of child sexual abuse material. The United States is the number one, with Europe being the number two. Therefore, it is our responsibility. And I think often these topics are difficult to have conversations with others, with our friends and colleagues. We traditionally want an easy life. We just want to get through. And this doesn't come up at the dinner table over a drink with friends. But I think it is important for us who are aware this is a problem to highlight, especially if it's happening where we live.
Yes, but I think what people don't realize with this push towards the sexualization of children in schools, that this is going to make children more vulnerable to sex exploitation. So I'm not sure if you're aware of the material coming out of the Rutgers Foundation and the WHO's Collaborating Center on Sexual Guidance, Sex Education, but there is a drive to educate children about sex from a very early age. And there is an article about this on my Substack as well. And it has some useful links in there if you would like to access the WHO document on this. They talk about educating children on masturbation from the age of 3 and 4 and that sort of thing. And there's also some videos from the Rutgers Foundation where you see a psychologist actually speaking. I think it's a psychologist. I don't know if it's a teacher or anyway. There's somebody positioned, an adult speaking to a little boy and a little girl about sex and touching themselves and that sort of thing and what feels good. And it's highly inappropriate. But if parents don't wake up to realize that there is this agenda to sexualize their children in schools, where children spend a lot of hours in schools where parents are not privy to see what they're learning. These sorts of things will make children vulnerable to sexual exploitation. If children are used to having discussions with adults about sex from a very early age, who are not their parents, this lends itself to exploitation later on by often it is an uncle or a neighbor or a teacher or something like that. So we really do not want to have to allow the sex education, the sex miseducation in schools, and there is ample reason for everyone to engage in this. If you don't see if you don't think that you can help that poor child in a cage in a tunnel, do bring it home and think about what the sex education, miseducation at school, what the impact might be on your children, and perhaps that will help you to take action and put things in context, because it is by each and every one of us turning a blind eye and thinking, well, this doesn't affect me, I'm not going to engage with that. This is what leads to, this is actually what has led us to all be complicit in what is basically the downfall of humanity. What we're seeing is the end of a civilization, this very materialistic, individual-centered kind of behaviors, this sort of sense that we're all in isolation and what we do doesn't affect anybody else, so we just do what's best for us, and very money orientated. We're seeing the end of that. It's unsustainable. It can no longer exist, and we are having to really clean up the mess now and build and create what will be a healthy, free world for people going forward.
And I think from a male perspective, I think men have been sold a lie that this is harmless, this is victimless. And one of the parts of your briefing, you say in Germany, law enforcement experts they say the country is 250,000, that's 250,000 to 400,000 prostitutes. 60% are trapped in a form of trafficking. What is called prostitution in Germany is in large parts a field of organized crime. And that's part of it. Then you look at all the hosting of sexual images in Europe, you talk about the Netherlands being one of the largest hosting. And I think people need to not only take responsibility, people need to accept that this is not victimless, that those women who find themselves in that situation are not empowered and living the dream of their existence. They are trapped in a crime syndicate and they're not able to escape. And woe be to anyone who participates in that, holding women within that.
Thank you for pointing that out, Peter. So many times in my life, I've met men who've said, there's an assumption that a prostitute makes good money or enjoys it, or, so, there are even sort of certain groups that in certain cultures, you take the groom off to a prostitute before they get married. I mean, whatever next, there's a degeneracy that that has found its way into our lives, and we need to get rid of it. Nobody benefits from prostitution. Certainly, nobody who's in the position of being a sex slave for anybody. And we are, as human beings, we are creative, and we thrive when we are free to do what we like. And I don't think there's any child in the world at the age of 4 or 5 saying, I want to be a prostitute when I grow up.
100%. Can I just finish off with what you want to get out of this? You finish off with a call for targeted action, and you touch on 3 areas. You touch on public awareness, legislation, law enforcement, and other actually survivors and culture. And there are 23 points in that. And obviously you begin with the initial point of a public document, which is public awareness, by going into the others. I mean, talk to us about that. Putting this together is not about simply about information going out. It's certainly not about entertainment. It is about actually doing something. So tell us, you've done many policy documents on different areas. Something like this, what is the goal and the reason behind it, and what you want to be the kind of follow-on events as people dissect this?
Well, we want help for the victims, so that they can be restored to, the creative human beings that we all should be. But we need to stop this, and we need to trust that we can stop it. And it's been some time since, I think we put this document out a couple of months ago, and it was at the time when there was the Sound of Freedom film. And so the film generated some interest, and that sort of died down, and now it's it's sort of as if it's in the past, and the issue doesn't exist anymore. And so I think what we really need to do is we need to identify individuals who are involved in this industry, and we need to bring them to book. And we need to expose them, because, in the past, there have been individuals, I'm thinking Jimmy Savile, who have been, among others, who've been actually in high profile and absolutely protected, really, by in their crimes. And there are many others like this. And so we need to actually, as a society, we need to work together to identify these individuals and bring them to book and hold them accountable for their crimes and stop what they are doing.
Yeah.
And I feel if there's, if we are able to do that, we will prevent others from participating too. So and we certainly need, and so that is something we can do on that level. And on the other level is we want people to really stop and examine their own behaviors, protect their own children, and stop using pornography.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And prostitution.
Yeah, 100%. Tess, huge appreciation to you for putting this together with your team. It's a fantastic document, and it's wonderful to see an organization kind of looking at other areas that aren't necessarily or haven't been central to their initial purpose, and realizing there are other issues they need to address. So thank you for bringing your expertise and researchers onto this subject, because I think it is absolutely essential.
Thanks very much, Peter. Well, you may be aware that our counter to the Great Reset is the Great Freet. And we certainly can't go about setting ourselves free and ignoring all those that are really held in captivity. So I do want to just raise awareness of the Great Freet. The Great Reset would have us all enslaved. The Great Freet is about all of us rediscovering our dignity and extracting ourselves from this very exploitative system where we're all on a treadmill, we all work far too many hours. We have little family time. We spend no time in nature. So it's about really bringing ourselves back to our essence of who we are as human beings, remembering who we are, remembering our power, our courage, and our strength, and the way we all work together. And so the Great Reset is something I urge everybody to look up, thegreatreset.org, and not only look up but actually subscribe to, so that we can support each other in cleaning up our society and taking back our power.
And let me just finish off by saying, those in the UK, you've had many great events down there in Bath on the Better Way conference. You had Dr. Peter McCulloch speaking at one of your events. Of course, those abroad can tune in and watch, but maybe finish off just by reminding people of that work you do, and certainly those in the UK can physically go and be part of some of those great events.
Yes, we have a lot of in-person events. I mean, just last week I spoke in Wales, in Totnes, and in Custoke. We're planning on doing a series of tours up north come January, and we're also doing a lot of outreach internationally with other road trips. Obviously, my colleagues are in Canada and South Africa and Asia, and we have a great conference coming up the 10th, 11th, I think it's the 9th, 10th, 11th, or 10th, 11th, and 12th in Asia. It's an online conference, it's free, and it's about traditional natural healing alternatives. And so I do encourage people, especially if you're in the West, to attend that conference, because it's quite mind-boggling and eye-opening to see all of these safe natural remedies that actually have been withheld from us, and we don't get to know about them, but they've been around for thousands of years, hundreds and thousands of years. So that's a great conference. And the Better Way conference is still accessible and still very, very relevant. The one from 2022, it's a solutions-focused conference. It was seven questions we looked at. How do we reclaim science? How do we address environmental issues? How do we sort out what's happening in the media, restore media credibility, the credibility of the judiciary, and so on? So it's really a fascinating conference. And the way that the conferences are designed is that they are paneled. So we have short presentations with a number of experts, and then they all get together and have a kind of a Q&A thing, and it's really nice and interactive. As I say, solutions focused. So I do hope that people will look at that. It's betterwayconference.org. You can watch 2022 for free. I think there's a small charge for the 2023 one. But also you gave me an opportunity to say that out of that conference in 2022 came the Better Way Charter, which is 7 principles about how we all get along together in, to create a better way and a better world. And which is why the document on human trafficking is so key as well, because it's about the 7 principles are: we act in honor and do no harm. We are free beings with free will. Obviously, there are many who aren't free, so we're talking about the world that we want. We are part of nature, and we need nature to be healthy as well as us. We are spiritual, and we thrive when our lives have meaning and purpose. And we thrive together. We value different perspectives. We actually need to have conversations like these difficult ones, and hear from other people so that we can develop our knowledge and wisdom. We don't have to all agree. And lastly, we use technology with discernment. So those are the 7 principles of the Better Way. And underpinning all of this is that we do not tolerate the violation of inalienable rights and freedoms. Hence why we really need to address the human trafficking issue.
Complete. And all those links are in the description for those watching on video or on any of the podcasting platforms. Dr. Tess Lawrie, always love having you on. Thank you so much for coming and sharing the work you're doing in this document. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Peter.